Evan Cole never thought his week would begin with a sudden transfer order, but that was how life worked for low-rank engineers in the Galactic Fleet. One moment he had been repairing damaged shuttle wings on a quiet base, and the next moment he was climbing the ramp of the TSV Valiant, a military escort ship that looked older than half the stations still in service. The hull had scratches from past missions. The lights flickered whenever the main generator hummed, and the crew moved with the tired steps of people who worked too much and slept too little. Still, Evan felt excited. He had been hoping for a real mission for a long time, and this one sounded important. Escorting a convoy through a stretch of space known for strange disappearances and faint pirate activity. The problem was that half the ship's original crew was stuck planetside due to a transport malfunction. The Valiant had to leave immediately, so replacements were pulled from every corner of the fleet. That was how Evan ended up aboard. What he did not expect was the other replacement. A tall, silver-eyed alien woman standing near the cargo lift with a single black bag and an unreadable expression on her face. Her dark suit had no decoration, her boots made no sound, and her posture was so still that she looked like a statue waiting to wake. Evan had seen aliens before, but this one felt different. There was something quiet about her, something watchful, as if she were listening to things no one else could hear. Someone whispered near the corridor, "That's Sira Velthari. The officers said she's a xenology interpreter or something." "Interpreter?" Another crew member muttered. "Why would we need one? On a simple escort run." Evan did not know the answer, and from the way Sira kept her gaze forward, she did not plan on explaining anything. When the commander introduced her to the crew, she simply nodded, as though every detail of the ship was already familiar to her. After the short briefing, everyone moved toward their assigned stations. Evan checked his datapad to find his module number, but before he could understand the tiny print, Sira suddenly appeared beside him. She did not step loudly or rush, she just seemed to be there. "You are Evan Cole," she said in a calm, almost quiet voice. "Yes. That's me." He offered a friendly smile, unsure if she knew who he was because she read the roster or because of something else. "We are assigned to the same working module," she said. "Module 3B. Your engineering access and my observation duties overlap there. It seems there was a system pairing error." "Oh." Evan blinked. He had not expected that. "Well, no problem. I guess we'll be working side by side." Sira nodded once. "It will be efficient." He tried not to stare at her. Her silver eyes reflected the corridor lights like polished metal, and her expression never changed, not annoyed, not pleasant, just calm, as if she carried her own world inside her mind. She had the faint patterns of light under her skin, almost like moving shadows, but too subtle to be sure. He also noticed she kept her hands behind her back, almost in a defensive habit, though her posture was not tense. They reached the module, which looked like half workshop and half monitoring station. The lights flickered once before stabilizing. Evan sighed. Old ship, old problems. Sira stepped inside first and slowly scanned the room, not with her eyes alone but with a focus so intense that Evan could almost feel the air shift. She touched one of the side panels lightly with her fingertips, as if sensing the vibration inside the walls. "This ship is restless," she murmured. Evan raised an eyebrow. "Restless? Well, yeah. The generator hums weird sometimes, but I can check it." She did not answer. Instead, she walked toward the console near the bulkhead, where faint static interference shimmered across the screen. Evan followed her and leaned forward. "That hasn't happened before," he said. "Maybe a loose wire?" "No." Sira's voice remained steady. Something passed through the ship's outer layer. A disturbance, like pressure on metal from a direction that does not exist. Evan stared at her, unsure how to respond. Could be debris hitting the hull? It was not physical, So, what then? She did not answer at first. She simply looked at the screen, studying the pattern of static that repeated every few seconds. Evan watched her face carefully. Her expression did not change, yet something in her eyes suggested she understood more than she planned to share. Finally, she spoke. Your fleet calls these patterns ghost echoes. Yeah, Evan said slowly. But they're usually harmless. Just old signals bouncing off dust clouds. Not always, she whispered. Before Evan could ask what she meant, the ship suddenly gave a soft jolt, like a heartbeat running through the hull. The lights dimmed, then brightened. Evan instinctively grabbed the edge of the console while Sierra stayed perfectly still, her stance lowering slightly as if bracing not against motion but against some invisible pressure. Then everything returned to normal. Probably just the generator, Evan said, though even he did not believe his own words. We've been having minor energy drops. Sierra slowly turned her head toward him. Her silver eyes reflected the overhead lights like a mirror. This is not your generator. Evan swallowed. Then what was it? She looked at the screen again. A sign that something is watching. Evan felt a chill crawl down the back of his neck. He wanted to ask her more, but the door slid open and an officer stepped inside. Cole! Velthari! The officer barked. We're entering the first waypoint. Stay alert. Scanners are detecting unusual energy signatures around the convoy. Could be pirates. Could be nothing. But keep your stations ready. Everyone. Sierra nodded. Evan gave an awkward salute. The officer left quickly, leaving the room quiet again. Evan exhaled. Well, that's great. Pirates or nothing. Makes you feel safe, right? Sierra did not laugh or smile. Instead, she stepped closer to the secondary panel and placed her hand flat against it. Her fingers moved slightly, tracing invisible lines. These signatures are not pirates. You know what they are? They are familiar to me. Evan waited for her to continue, but she did not. She looked like someone listening to a sound that others could not hear. Her stillness made the air feel heavier, as if something was pressing on the walls around them. Evan cleared his throat. So, familiar in what way? Sierra took a long moment before answering. I was sent here because of this. The fleet believes I am only an interpreter, but they requested my presence because their sensors could not understand these readings. They hoped I could. And can you? Yes, she said quietly. But the truth will not bring comfort. Evan looked at her closely. She was not afraid, but she was wary, like a soldier waiting for an enemy she had faced before. That was when he realized something. Sierra was not mysterious because she wanted to be. She was mysterious because she carried knowledge that made silence easier than explanation. Their console beeped again. More interference. More ghost echoes. More repeating static signatures that looked almost like signals from something alive. Evan rubbed the back of his neck. Well, since we're stuck here together, you might as well tell me what's following us. Sierra slowly lifted her gaze. Something that hunts energy. Something that moves without shape. Something my people fear. Evan felt another cold ripple down his spine. And it's here? Around us? It is not just around us, she whispered. It is searching for a way in. Evan stepped closer to her without thinking, his instincts alert. He did not know what the ship was facing, but he could tell one thing. Sierra Velthari was not just an interpreter. She was something much more. And whatever followed the Valiant, she had seen it before. The static on the screen fluttered again. A low hum ran through the bulkhead. The lights flickered once more. This time, the ship did not feel restless. It felt watched. Evan stayed in Module 3B longer than he meant to. Something about Sierra's calm voice and the strange tension in the air made it hard for him to leave. The Valiant moved steadily through space. But inside the walls, There was an uneasy silence, as if the ship knew something was wrong before the crew did. Every few minutes, the screen flickered again, showing the same pattern of static, repeating like a heartbeat from a creature hidden in the dark. Sierra watched those patterns with deep focus, barely blinking. Evan finally spoke, trying to break the heavy feeling. You said this thing hunts energy. How does something hunt energy? Like an animal? Or a machine? End of for 9. End of for 9. Replats of company. End of for 9. Sierra did not turn, but her voice softened slightly. It is not an animal, and not a machine. It is something in between. A swarm of tiny forms that connect together. They feed on heat, light, electricity, anything that gives life to metal structures. So we are flying through space with a creature that eats ships, Evan muttered. Great. Sierra finally looked at him. It does not eat in the way you imagine. It absorbs. It drains. Until nothing is left. Tu ops oven. Allo si. Tu ops oven. Tu ops oven. Better, he said dryly. She almost tilted her head, as if studying human humor, but she did not smile. Her eyes flicked back to the panel. When I was assigned here, I expected the first signs. But I did not expect them so soon. Evan stepped closer. Assigned? You mean someone sent you to track this thing? Sierra hesitated. Her voice dropped. My people do not interfere with human missions, but they make exceptions for this. The swarm has destroyed civilizations before. We learned to follow its signals. When your fleet detected something unusual, they contacted my council. Evan rubbed his forehead. And your council sent you? Alone? Yes. That doesn't seem fair. It is not about fairness. It is duty. Evan opened his mouth to argue, but the door slid open again. A tired-looking navigator stepped inside. Cole, the captain wants an engineering report on the last power drop. And Velthari, the captain wants you on the bridge. Sierra nodded immediately. Evan watched her leave with her quiet, steady steps. He felt a strange pull in his chest. Even though he barely knew her, he had the sense she was carrying more weight than any single person should. Something in her calmness seemed fragile beneath the surface, like she was holding back fears she refused to show. When the door closed, Evan checked the systems. Everything looked functional except the interference. He tried rerouting the signal pathways, but the static returned as soon as he cleared it. It was as if the disturbance wanted to be seen. After half an hour, Sierra did not return. Evan wiped his hands on his uniform and headed toward the bridge. The corridors were quiet, except for the soft hum of engines. The crew nodded to him, but most looked distracted, unsure if the strange readings were something to worry about or just another old ship glitch. When he reached the bridge, he paused at the entrance. Sierra stood near the central display, her hands behind her back as usual. The captain and officers watched her closely, waiting for her explanation. This signature is not pirate activity, Sierra said, in a calm, even tone. Pirates do not create patterns like this. The captain frowned. You're certain? Yes. Then what do you believe it is? Sierra's gaze lowered to the swirling energy readings on the screen. A moving cluster of non-living forms. Something that enters ships by finding weaknesses in their hull or energy lines. Are you saying something is trying to infiltrate the Valiant? The navigator asked. It is already trying, Sierra replied. A murmur spread through the officers. Evan stepped forward, surprising himself by speaking. It's been messing with the systems in Module 3B, too. Static patterns. Energy dips. Sierra says it's not random. The captain turned to him. Cole, is this true? Yes, sir. The interference isn't normal. It feels like something probing the ship. Sierra's expression did not change, but something softened in her eyes, as if she appreciated Evan backing her. The captain took a deep breath. All right. What do you recommend? Sierra studied the readings again. For now, keep all systems stable. Do not push the engines or drain energy suddenly. The swarm reacts to sudden changes. It moves toward the strongest source of power. If we stay consistent, it may take longer to locate our main reactor. May? The captain repeated. Sira nodded. It will still try. But time will help us prepare. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Evan could tell most of them were still unsure whether to fully trust her. But the patterns on the screen did not lie. Something was following them. The captain finally spoke. Very well. Velthari will advise us on any changes in the readings. Cole, stay assigned to her station for now. The two of you seem to have a good handle on this disturbance. 1. Evan nodded. Yes, sir. Sira dipped her head slightly, a gesture of respect. They left the bridge together. As they walked down the corridor, Evan noticed how quiet she had become. Her steps were slower, almost thoughtful. Are you okay? He asked gently. Yes, she said. Then, after a moment, she added, Your captain listened. That is rare. Many dismiss warnings about the swarm. They believe you, Evan said. Why wouldn't they? Sira looked ahead. Because humans trust what they see. The swarm hides until it is too late. Evan glanced sidelong at her. You've faced it before, haven't you? Her silence was answer enough. They returned to Module 3B. As they entered, the static on the screen brightened suddenly. Sira hurried forward, her calm composure slipping for a moment. Her fingers danced across the controls as she scanned the waves of interference. What's happening? Evan asked. They are closer. Her voice was tight for the first time. Much closer. The ship shuddered. A low vibration traveled through the walls. Evan braced himself. Could it already be inside? No. But it is pressing against the hull. Searching for a weak point. Evan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The idea of some invisible swarm pressing through the walls made his skin crawl. What do we do? Strengthen the hull? Increase shields? No, that might attract them faster. She touched the panel again. The swarm responds to energy spikes. If we make ourselves look brighter, they will come in a wave. So, what do you want us to do? Keep everything normal, while something eats the ship from the outside. Yes. She paused. For now, Evan let out a breath. Great plan. Sira turned toward him. Her voice softened. It is the only way to slow them. Human ships are powerful but loud, bright, alive with energy. The swarm notices them easily. Evan watched her for a moment. But you knew this was coming. You knew they were tracking something. You knew we were in danger. Evan watched her. All the wanting the one. We were in danger. Evan watched her for a moment. You knew we were in danger. Yes, she admitted. But I did not know how soon. Why didn't you tell the crew earlier? She lowered her eyes. Because knowledge brings fear. And fear leads to mistakes. The swarm grows stronger when chaos begins. Evan sighed. So, your plan was to quietly solve everything by yourself? Her eyes lifted to meet his. I was trained for this. And now you're not alone, Evan said. We'll deal with it together. Sira studied him with that same careful, thoughtful expression he had seen before. She was not used to someone offering support, not used to someone standing beside her. After a long moment, she gave a slow nod. The ship trembled again, harder this time. The lights flickered. Evan grabbed the console. That wasn't small. No, Sira whispered. They found a weak point. Evan leaned closer to the panel. Where? Sira pointed at the lower decks on the display. Near the maintenance tunnels. They are pushing in. Evan stared. The maintenance tunnels. Those things lead straight to the power lines. That is why they chose it. He exhaled sharply. Then, we need to get down there. Sira nodded. Yes, before they breach. She stepped toward the door. Evan followed without hesitation. For the first time, he understood how serious things truly were. The Valiant was not just being watched, it was being hunted. And if the swarm entered the ship, not even Sira's calm warnings would save them. They hurried into the corridor, moving toward the lower decks, while the ship hummed with growing unease. Evan didn't know what waited below, but he knew one thing for certain. Whatever Sira had faced before, she would have to face it again. And now, he was going with her. Evan followed Sira through the narrow corridors of the Valiant as the ship trembled again. This time with a deeper sound that echoed like metal under stress. The lights dimmed to a soft yellow, warning of power fluctuations. The lower decks were quieter than the rest of the ship, filled with long maintenance tubes, exposed pipes, and thick cables running along the walls like veins. Evan had worked in these areas before, but tonight they felt different. Too silent. Too cold. As if something in the atmosphere was being slowly drained. Sira moved ahead with her usual steady steps, her silver eyes scanning every corner. She did not speak, but her focus told Evan she already sensed something he could not. He kept close, holding a portable scanner in one hand. The device kept flashing weak signals that made no sense. One moment, it detected nothing. The next moment, it detected everything, as if thousands of tiny shapes were moving around them but remained invisible. "What do you see?" Evan whispered. Sira paused beside a long pipe that vibrated softly. She pressed her fingers to it and closed her eyes. They are close. Very close. They are spreading along the metal surfaces, searching for a weakness. Evan swallowed hard. "Can they get through solid walls?" "Not easily," she said. "But they do not need to make a hole. They can slip through microscopic gaps. They can pass through cracks too small for the human eye." Evan stared at the wall, suddenly aware of how thin everything seemed. "That's comforting." Sira lowered her hand. "Stay behind me." He did. The tunnel ahead bent sharply downward, leading toward the power lines that fed the main battery. The deeper they went, the colder the air grew, as if warmth itself was being stolen away. Evan could feel the temperature shift, a clear sign that something was feeding on the energy sources nearby. Then he heard a faint crackling soft, like static licking metal edges. Sira stopped instantly. "Do you hear it?" Evan nodded. "Yes. That is them." Evan tightened his grip on the scanner. "How close?" Sira looked ahead without blinking. "Right under us." Before Evan could speak, the floor vibrated with tiny tapping noises, like hundreds of small metallic claws moving beneath the panels. The ship gave a short shudder. Sira reached for the emergency tool at her belt, something shaped like a long rod with faint glowing lines. "What's that?" Evan asked quietly. "A resonance staff," she replied. "It emits a frequency that slows the swarm's movement." She stepped slowly forward, and the glowing lines changed color, spreading into a pale blue light. As the light brightened, the tapping beneath the floor grew weaker. Evan sighed in relief. "So it works. For now," she said softly. "But the swarm learns. It adapts." The tunnel ahead darkened suddenly. The lights flickered twice, then went out completely. Evan cursed under his breath. Great. Perfect timing. Sira lifted the glowing rod slightly higher, its blue light illuminating the walls. As they continued forward, Evan felt a strange sensation in the air. The particles felt heavy, thang, endophamin, endophay, like the atmosphere was thickening. He realized it wasn't just cold, something was draining the energy around them. Then he saw it. A faint shimmer on the wall, like a patch of air bending the wrong way. "Sira," he whispered. "I see it." The shimmering shape began to spread, crawling slowly across the metal surface like liquid silver. Evan took a step back, heart pounding. "That's them?" he breathed. "A small part of them," Sira said. "A probe, a scout." The shimmering cluster rippled, forming thin strands that stretched toward the power cables. Sira lifted her staff. The blue light pulsed sharply. The strands shrank back, trembling like something alive. The air hummed with a strange vibration, and the shimmer collapsed into tiny sparks that faded into nothing. Evan let out a breath he had been holding. "So they can be stopped." "Yes," she said. "But there will be more." They moved deeper into the tunnels, passing several access doors and maintenance panels. At each turn, Sira stopped to sense the surroundings. Evan admired her ability to remain calm. Even in the darkest parts of the ship, she stood with quiet strength, her expression unwavering. But then, as they reached a wider chamber, her steps slowed. "What's wrong?" Evan asked. Sira's eyes narrowed. Evan did and heard nothing at first, just the hum of the emergency lights trying to come back on. Then, slowly, he heard a growing sound, a soft rustling, a metallic whisper, a faint clicking that multiplied quickly. The sound came from the ceiling. Evan looked up just as a thin crack of glowing silver spread across the metal panel above them. "They are breaching," Sira said firmly. Evan's heart raced. "What do we do?" "Stay behind me. Do not run." The ceiling cracked again, louder this time. The panel bent inward. Then it broke open with a sharp metallic sound. A stream of shimmering shapes spilled downward, tiny, flickering forms like metallic dust mixed with electric sparks. They moved together like smoke in a storm, swirling in an unnatural pattern. Evan stepped back, shielding his eyes from the blinding glow. Sira lifted her resonant staff, and the blue light flashed outward in a wave. The shimmering forms recoiled, their movement slowing, but they did not disappear. Instead, more of them poured through the crack, clustering together into a larger shape. Evan whispered, "That's not a scout anymore." "No," Sira said. "That is a fragment of the swarm." The fragment twisted into a shape like a thin, floating net of metal, spinning and crackling as it moved toward the power conduit behind them. Sira stepped in front of it, placing herself between the swarm and the ship's power lines. She whispered something in her language. The resonant staff glowed brighter, then released a sharp wave of sound so high-pitched that Evan barely heard it. The swarm shuddered violently. Parts of it broke away like shattered glass, dissolving into sparks. But the remaining part hardened, its glow intensifying. "It is adapting," Sira warned. "It recognizes the frequency. Then we need something stronger." Evan rushed to the wall, scanning the power lines. "I can reroute energy through the emergency coil. It might overload them." "No," Sira grabbed his arm. "If you create an energy spike, the entire swarm outside will rush toward us." Evan froze. "Then what can stop it?" Sira looked at the fragment as it thickened, preparing to strike. "We hold it back until it weakens." "And if it doesn't weaken?" She didn't answer. The fragment lunged. Sira struck it with the staff, sending a wave of blue light that slowed the attack but did not stop it this time. The swarm pushed forward, inching closer to the conduit. Evan made a fast decision. "Sira, step right." She obeyed without question. Evan reached for the emergency panel on the wall and slammed it open. Behind it were old manual circuits, rusty and outdated but still functional. He grabbed a thick, insulated rod and jammed it into the panel, forcing a short burst of raw static energy into the air. The burst was weak, unstable, and uneven, but it was enough to disrupt the swarm's movement. The fragment convulsed, twisting in uneven patterns. Sira used the moment to strike with her staff again. The blue wave collided with the unstable fragment. This time it broke apart completely, dissolving into tiny sparks that faded into the air. Evan panted. "Is it gone?" "For now," Sira said. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Sierra lowered her staff. I agree. She looked at the faint traces of silver still clinging to the ceiling crack. This was only a small piece, she whispered. The main swarm is still outside. We must warn the captain, and we must prepare. Evan nodded. Prepare for what? Sierra met his eyes, her expression serious and steady. For the moment, they finally break in. Together they turned and headed back toward the upper decks, moving quickly through the cold, echoing tunnels. The Valiant trembled again. A quiet reminder that the greatest threat was still out there, waiting for its chance. And Sierra knew that chance was coming soon. Evan and Sierra hurried through the narrow corridors of the Valiant, moving as fast as they could without attracting attention. The ship hummed with an uneasy silence, and every vibration felt sharper, more meaningful, as if the entire vessel was reacting to the swarm pressing against its hull. The emergency lights flickered occasionally, washing the walls in pale red and orange glows that made everything feel even more tense. Sierra walked ahead with her usual calm steps, but Evan could feel the change in her. The small piece of the swarm they fought had shaken her, not physically, but emotionally. She hid it well, yet the slight tightness around her eyes and the way she held her staff closer told him she was preparing herself for something much bigger. They reached the elevator that led to the upper decks. It was still working, though the doors opened slower than usual. Groaning softly, Evan pressed the button for the bridge, and the elevator began to rise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the machinery filled the silence. Finally, Evan asked, How long do we have before they try again? Sierra looked at the ceiling, sensing the vibrations through the metal. Not long. The swarm will regroup. They learn from every encounter. They will find another weak point. And if they break in? Evan whispered. Sierra lowered her gaze. Then the Valiant will fall. Evan's stomach tightened. He didn't want to think about what would happen if the swarm reached the main reactor. The convoy they were escorting depended on them. If the Valiant was destroyed, the entire mission would collapse. When they reached the bridge, the doors slid open. The captain and officers turned immediately, their expressions full of worry. The screens flickered with strange energy readings, and the ship's AI kept repeating a warning about external interference. Report, the captain said sharply. Sierra stepped forward. A part of the swarm breached the lower deck. We contained it, but their main force is close, very close. A heavy silence filled the bridge. The navigator looked pale. How much time do we have? Minutes, Sierra answered. Maybe less. The captain clenched his jaw. Is there any way to stop them? Evan stepped forward. We need to use the device, Sierra talked, about the one that collapses the swarm's energy forms. The officers exchanged nervous glances. The captain's voice was low. Velthari, you said your device could damage our ship. Yes, Sierra admitted. The original version is dangerous. But there is another way. Evan nodded. We can build a safer version using the Valiant's systems, but we'll need access to the main grid. The Revermand. One. Evan nodded. We'll need access to the main grid. Sierra continued. We can combine my resonant technology with your stabilizers. If we connect them correctly, we can create a harmonized pulse that will force the swarm to unravel. It will not destroy the ship, but it will drain a lot of energy at once. The captain looked between them. If we lose too much energy, the engines may shut down. Yes, Sierra said calmly. But you will still be alive. If the swarm enters the reactor, you will not. Silence settled again. This time deeper. The captain finally nodded. Do it, he said. The Valiant is yours. Tell us what you need. Sierra bowed her head slightly, then turned to Evan. We must go to engineering. Evan nodded. Let's move. They hurried out of the bridge. Behind them, the captain's voice filled the ship through the intercom, ordering all crew to prepare for emergency procedures. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Boots ran across floors. Tools rattled. doors sealed. The entire ship woke up with a sense of urgency and fear. As they descended toward engineering, Evan felt the ship shaking again. The tremors were growing stronger, like distant thunder. Sira tightened her grip on her staff. "They are trying again," she whispered. "They are pressing hard. They want the reactor." "Then we need to be faster," Evan said. When they reached engineering, the crew was already waiting. The main reactor pulsed with a soft blue glow, but the lights around it flickered as the swarm drained energy from the hull. Evan and Sira rushed to the main power grid. Sira opened a small black case she had carried since boarding the ship. Inside was a smooth, dark device, with glowing patterns her resonant core. She handed it to Evan carefully. "Place it into the stabilizer slot." Evan slid the device into a hollow opening on the reactor panel. It fit perfectly, as if it were always meant to be part of the Valiant. The reactor hummed louder, reacting instantly to the new presence. Sira moved to the side panel and traced symbols on the glowing display. "We must synchronize the frequencies. When it reaches the right point, activate the pulse." Evan adjusted the stabilizers while watching the energy wave rise on the screen. Engineers around them watched with wide eyes, unsure if this was genius or madness. The ship suddenly jerked violently, almost knocking everyone off their feet. Evan grabbed a railing. "What was that?" Sira's voice was steady but urgent. "The swarm found a crack near the upper hull. They are gathering. We must hurry." Evan nodded and turned back to the controls. "Ready when you are." Sira took a deep breath and placed both hands on the panel. Her fingers moved in precise patterns, faster than any human could follow. Symbols and frequencies flashed across the screen. The reactor lights dimmed. The deck vibrated. The air grew colder. Evan felt the energy build like a storm inside the metal walls. Sira whispered, "Now." Evan slammed his hand down on the activation switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire ship lit up in a wave of brilliant white-blue light. It traveled through every panel, every conduit, every corner of the Valiant. The sound was low and deep, like a distant echo shaking the bones of the ship. The harmonized pulse expanded outward, passing through the hull into the dark space outside. The swarm reacted immediately. The shimmering shapes clinging to the hull flickered violently, twisting in unnatural patterns. The entire ship shook harder, as if thousands of metallic forms were being torn apart. The pulse continued, stretching farther, brighter, stronger. Sira closed her eyes, sensing everything. "It is working," she said softly. But Evan felt the deck tilt. "The engines, they're losing power. Hold it steady," one engineer yelled. "The core is draining fast." Evan gritted his teeth and held onto the controls. "Come on, Valiant. Stay with us." The pulse reached its peak. The swarm's collective glow fractured into millions of tiny sparks that faded into the void around them. Then, slowly, the shaking stopped. The ship stilled. The lights stabilized. Sira opened her eyes. "It is done." Evan let out a long breath and leaned against the console. "We actually did it." The engine lights flickered back on, weak but stable. Engineers began cheering quietly, some in disbelief, some in relief. The captain's voice crackled through the intercom moments later, announcing that external readings were clear. The swarm signatures had vanished completely. Evan looked at Sira. She stood there quietly, her expression soft for the first time since he met her. "You saved us," Evan said gently. "No," Sira replied. "We saved the Valiant together." Evan smiled. "Then stay with us. The ship, the crew. We could use someone like you." Sira hesitated. Her eyes reflected the soft reactor glow. "My duty is not finished. There are other places where the swarm hides, other ships that may face danger. My people expect me to return." Evan felt a strange ache in his chest. "So that's it? You leave now?" Sira stepped closer. Human ships are loud and bright and full of life. I thought it made them weak, but I was wrong. It makes them brave. Evan held her gaze. Will you come back? Sira considered his question for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Yes. When my path brings me here again. The Valiant hummed softly. The danger gone. Life returning to the ship piece by piece. Evan watched her quietly, knowing that she was more than an enigmatic alien woman now. She was part of their story, part of their survival, and part of their future whenever she chose to return.